A BC doctor has come a little closer to fulfilling his childhood dreams of becoming an astronaut. He's part of a team that is researching how anaesthetic behaves in space. They did their research in France, where Dr. Matthew Turnock was able to experience microgravity for the first time. Have a look.
Wow, that is intense.
Their lab, the Airbus A310-0G, is the world's largest gravity-free aircraft. The research is supported by the European Space Agency, the Canadian Space Agency, and an innovation grant of $204,000. To learn more about this research, we're joined by Dr. Matthew Turnock, back on the ground. He's an anesthesiologist at Royal Columbian Hospital. Dr. Turnock, firstly, what is it like to experience microgravity?
A very intense experience. You know, you talk to people who have been up there before and they try and describe it to you, but there's really nothing like actually being in the aircraft itself. You know, every parabola is like falling off a roller coaster, and you do that 30 times in a row over 3 days. It's a pretty intense experience the first time.
And you probably develop either a really good stomach or a slightly weaker stomach. A bit more about this study that you're doing. Why is it important for you and other doctors to know how anesthetic behaves in space?
Yeah, so more and more commercial companies out there are sending people out into space, and not all of them are necessarily as healthy as the astronauts that we've typically flown up there. And with more people in space, the chance for something happening that might require a procedure or surgery, which usually requires an anesthetic to go along with it, you know, those chances increase. And we really are very limited in the ways that we can provide anesthesia in space. Typically here on Earth, we would provide an inhalational anesthetic for most procedures. But, you know, the risk of disconnection and anesthetic gas leak into the spacecraft would be, you know, disastrous for all of the other astronauts. So, you know, there's a lot of hesitation for that. Down here on Earth, we use a spinal anesthesia for a lot of procedures such as cesarean sections or hip or knee replacements. And for that, you require very little actual medication, and the procedure itself can be taught quite easily. And so, you know, this type of anesthetic is an alternative to providing safe anesthesia in space, but we really have no idea how it would behave.
So far, based on what you've learned, what are the biggest takeaways from the experiments you have done?
Yeah. So one of the concerns about spinal anesthesia in space is that without gravity, the medication could float all the way up to the brain, which could render an astronaut unconscious and cause breathing problems, heart problems, seizures, and that would be disastrous. What we found, in fact, from our experiments was that not only does the medication not spread up to the brain, but it doesn't spread much at all. Which is very different here on Earth, where gravity helps the medication, you know, provide its effect. So it doesn't work, but for a different reason than we had thought. So all sorts of questions now are raised in how we could promote the spread of the medication. You know, do we need to adjust the dosage or inject it quicker or use different types of medication to get the effect we need? And these are all things that we still need to answer.
So to that end, are you planning to head back into microgravity and space anytime soon again?
Well, you know, the holy grail would be to conduct these experiments on the International Space Station, where we have a much more prolonged exposure to microgravity. But we're very fortunate that the Canadian Space Agency grant lasts for 2 years. So there's certainly opportunity to go back up there and refine our model and answer some of the questions that were raised the first time we were up there.
Right. Dr. Matthew Turnock, anesthesiologist at Royal Columbian Hospital. We appreciate your time and your expertise. Thanks for sharing it.
Thank you very much.